Welcome back to another episode of Void City Reviews, and this is a show we like to call Is It Good? Today we are going to be talking about a book and audiobook called Summer of Night by an author named Dan Simmons.
Is this from the 80s? I don't remember what year.
I believe it came out in the 90s.
So this is not...
mid-90s.
Definitely not new.
It's not new. No, this is an older book from like my childhood. And it's by an author. It's a Dan Simmons, who's actually from Illinois, so that's kind of cool, fellow Illinoisan. And it's a horror novel. Mm-hmm. It is most commonly compared to other books such as It or Stand By Me, in that there is an evil supernatural threat and a group of kids who happen to be the only things standing in its way from terrible, terrible things.
But what I like, so King talked about the comparisons, and he's just like, Simmons and Kings are about the same age, and they were influenced by the same things, and so it makes sense that they would wind up writing a somewhat similar book.
Yeah.
King did not have a problem with Summer of Night and any similarities with his own books.
Oh, no.
Which is fantastic. I think it's an audience thing, and it's like, oh, it's similar.
Yeah, no. And
two things can exist.
Most of the times when I see that comparison, it's usually done in a good way. It's like, if you liked it, you'll like this too, or if you like this, you'll like it.
Well, that's good.
But it's, for me, it's a good thing because it's one of my favorite stories, and this is one of my all-time favorite books.
Audiences, though, can get defensive, and they're like, "Wah!"
Oh, yeah. Only one thing can have a thing in it. Like,
yes.
Let's get over that idea. In this day and age, nothing you've seen has never been done before, so... this is a book from when I was a kid. I actually discovered this book, like the way I discovered most horror books and like Stephen King and other things like that. Dean Koontz, when I was young, was they would be sitting on the back of the toilet tank in our bathroom in my house, because that's where my mom, who loved to read horror books, would always leave them, in between, because that's the reading room, I guess. That's where you do your reading. So I would always see these books here and like, oh man, that looks pretty good. And then I read it afterwards, not in the bathroom, and I really enjoyed it. That was when I was like a kid, and later on, many years later, I listened to the audiobook when it became available on audio, and I really enjoyed that. The performance is excellent, and I recommended it to Toast, and he liked it as well.
I did. So I'm sure you recommended some Stephen King stuff to me first.
Yes.
Which I did not enjoy.
Not all of it. You liked some of it.
I want to say Insomnia came first.
Ooh.
Which I struggled through. And Dark
is
Tower
sad
was
for me.
Later. I feel like Summer of Night was in between.
Insomnia is one of my favorite books also.
Right.
Yes. Dark Tower, good. The Stand.
I
love it. He did not care for it.
I got a refund on that one.
Oof.
Not for me.
Yeah. I've still only ever refunded one book, and that was Game of Thrones. I made like chapter 13, and I was like, I can't.
13?
I can't do this.
I can't believe you made it that far.
I don't know how I did it. It was like a whole shift at work, and I'm like, I'm 8 hours into this garbage, and it's just nothing but incest and eating food. Like, stop.
Yes.
Stop. This book is terrible.
It's a lot of food discussion. So, Summer of Night. I usually say horror generally isn't my thing, even though I've watched and read plenty of horror things. But
I think it's certain types of horror aren't your thing.
It's not my go-to for sure. But yeah,
but if it's good,
if it's the right style, I'll say, and then if it's good, given my definition of good, and so this was great. And I think part of what did it is the Illinois connections. But he talks a lot about, all right, we're going to start. So it starts at the school.
Yes.
It starts at the school, and something...
Old Central School in Elm Haven, Illinois. Which,
but there's
for those of you who want some trivia, Elm Haven is actually Brimfield, Illinois, where Dan Simmons grew up.
There's a horror element right in the first chapter.
Yes, there is.
A kid goes missing.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a pretty long while before anything else comes up.
That might be the biggest similarity to It would be just that structure right there of having something happen to one little kid right at the start, and then a whole lot of world building and setup, and a little bit of creepiness here and there, but nothing overtly out like in the open.
Weirdness.
Yeah.
But I just liked, and
1950, 1955-ish, Illinois. Brimfield is central Illinois.
Yeah, it's rural.
Yeah.
And we're not from that rural, but even like it was still nostalgic for me, just thinking back to being that young and just having fun
not having
during
phones,
a summer.
Being able, kids playing outside.
Right.
Doing nonsense, going out in the forest,
even though,
and like.
And I'm gonna say the reading experience was different both times, because I think the first time it took me longer. I was listening to it while working, and so it was a longer period of time for me to finish the book.
Yeah.
And that opening was just like, I don't know. Every time I'd hit play, it'd be like stepping back in time, and it'd just be like playing in the yard and like doing stuff. And I'm like, this is great, even though not that much is like technically happening. It's very reminiscent of my own youth. And so I don't know if it were set somewhere else, if I would have had that connection. If it were in a city instead, I'm like, I don't know. But it is, and I enjoyed it.
That's kind of why I want you eventually to listen to it, even though it's a lot longer, just because it's similar but in a different town, in a different state. So that would kind of test that theory a little bit.
Probably wind up trying it.
It's Steven Weber reads that one, and it is the best version of Pennywise, and I'm including the new movie with Skarsgård. He blows Tim Curry and Skarsgård away as far as his Pennywise performance, and it's just a voice. Steven Weber, the guy from Wings. Also played the best Jack Torrance in the Shining miniseries that was on TV that was actually accurate to the book, unlike the Kubrick movie. But we'll talk about that more in a Stephen King discussion.
So there's just like, I don't know. There was a connection, even though I ordinarily want more story, more progress. I'm like, I'm just enjoying these kids having a nice summer, because it was the last day of school at the start. They get out, and then they're just having fun in the summer.
All sorts of cool adventures, hanging out in the abandoned chicken coop in the kids' backyard that they've turned into a fort. They've got like a old busted radio in there. They sit in there like just reading books, having a good time listening to records.
Town.
Yeah,
and I used to spend
the bike patrol.
I used to spend an entire summer on my bike.
Yep, that's all we did. You just get your friends, you ride around, and go places, and that's what they do here. So fun, and I like it too, just because it was the same for me. Like the Illinois setting, like I mean, I've been out to more like central Illinois, where it gets more like the country, and it still reminds me so much of it. And it's just talking about going to like the McDonald's out there. They've got these new cheeseburgers for $0.05. They're pretty good. Like,
so they mention Peoria pretty often.
The college.
Right.
I mean, he talks about, like, other than changing the name of Brimfield to Elm Haven, everything else he describes, the roads, where they are, the river, the train tracks, it's all, if you look at the map of Illinois, it's exactly where the book says it is. It's so weird. Like, you can even see where the old school used to be, where the new one is now. Like, so you can see where he lived. Like,
the other town that usually gets mentioned is Oak Hill. But I know Peoria gets mentioned pretty often. I enjoyed it. And then the second time through, I listened to it much faster, I think over 3 days, I want to say.
You also do that crazy thing where you listen to it at like 1.5 speed or something. It's not
great. I think you're the one that's crazy listening at 1x.
I like to hear everything at the speed the director wants. Like, I think that's why sometimes I got more out of the audiobooks than when I read a book myself. When I read a book, I read the way you listen. If a sentence is boring, I'll just be like, next sentence. Yes. If a paragraph, I get 2 sentences in and it's like nothing's happening, next paragraph. I don't even care anymore.
Where's the dialogue?
And so I probably missed something incredibly important that when I listen to it, like when I listen to this book, I feel like I had half of the book all over again that I hadn't even heard before. And I was like, oh, wow. Like I just feel like when you're forced to listen to it at someone else's pace, you like absorb it differently than if, I don't know, that's just me. I like it. Plus, I had a lot of overnight shifts where I had 8 hours of nothing to do. So I didn't want to be speeding through books and having no credits for a month.
Yeah.
That's why I tended to get books that were like 20 hours or longer. I'm like, if a book's not even 8 hours, it's not worth my time. One day.
Yeah, that's also fair. But, all right. So it's a cast of like 5 or 6 kids. It's a little bit rotational because, but there's a core group.
Yeah. And it's made up of Dan Simmons. It's funny. It's Dale Stewart, who is actually Dan Simmons. And the thing about this is that all these kids, their initials are the initials of the real kids that were his friends growing up. So these are all based on his real friends or people he knew, which is kind of cool. But yeah, it's all his real friends and some of their stuff that they actually did. So I imagine most of that stuff you were talking about, all like the setup and the world building, is stuff they actually did. He was just writing about their actual summers.
Probably.
Until he got to the supernatural stuff.
So yes, it's kids, they're 5th grade, I think. They just finished 5th grade.
Yeah, 4th, 5th grade, yeah. Right around there.
So they're about 10, 11. There's a town bully who's 16.
Yeah, because always back in the day, apparently the bully was like super old, like literally, like that's how it always, like even in Stand By Me, you got like these little kids, and then there's like Kiefer Sutherland, who's like driving around in his car with his 3 adult friends, and they're like pulling knives on children. I'm like, no wonder this kid carries a gun around. Like, good Lord, what was happening in the 50s? Wow. The Wild West back then. Little kids smoking cigarettes, like stabbing each other, like, and then just going home. Oh, how was your day? Oh, it's fine. It's good.
It's all good.
Oh, but you ripped your pants. Oh, you're grounded. But I got stabbed. Oh, but your pants are ripped.
Just repress it.
Yeah.
Compact it down. Boil up in 30 years. Just compact it down.
Yeah. But yes, yeah, CJ Congdon. He was he's probably stands out to me as even worse than oh God, it's gonna make me so mad I don't remember his name now, but Kiefer Sutherland's character in Stand By Me, who is a recurring character in the town of Castle Rock, in all of Stephen King's Castle Rock based stories. He actually, from the time he's a kid, you get to see all the way to when he dies. And yeah, it's pretty cool. That actually happens in Needful Things. But yeah, I don't know. He stands out to me in my head as like one of the worst like kid bullies of any book I've ever. Yeah, he's
pulls a gun on a kid.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Oh, on the train tracks.
Yeah.
And then Cordy came with her gun.
Cordy
was bigger. Yes. You're right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He did. He did put that right up in that kid's face.
And then he was gonna throw a kid off a bridge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like it was happening. It was in the midst of happening.
It's bad.
Yeah. This kid, he did not have any qualms about murder.
So the supernatural stuff, it starts quietly. It starts small, and it grows over the course of the summer. But there's a kind of ghost.
The soldier?
There's the soldier.
The soldier, that thing terrified me as a child. The soldier was like the scariest part of that book for me as a kid. The first time I read it, I was terrified to look out my windows. Like I thought anytime I opened my curtains, he would be there squished against the glass with his big eel face trying to get in.
To me, and I'm reading this as an adult, it's, I think, the truck.
See, the truck, every time they talk about the truck, the smell of it is what grosses me out the most. Like, I can smell it.
Being chased by a truck, like on foot or on bike being chased by a truck,
yeah,
it's kind of horrifying.
And no one seems to care or want to do anything about it.
No one's around.
Yeah.
You're in a cornfield.
Yeah. Oh, man, for Duane, oh, God, that scene was brutal.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so the truck, there's a malicious truck.
Yeah, it's called the rendering truck. So I guess this town just had this truck that drove around whenever like livestock or like roadkill was found. This guy would just go scoop all the dead animals in this truck and bring them to wherever dead animals go, which for this guy a lot of time was just like in a creek at the side of the road. He would just dump them out. But, yeah, it was gross.
It's not great.
No.
It's
that to me was always more gross just because they would always talk about the smell, and it was like, I've smelled dead animals before, and I know exactly what they're describing, and that would just be horrible to have that just driving around town all the time. But then to chase you, I've had just thoughts when I've been running on the prairie path before of what if I turn around, there's just a truck coming down the prairie path. What the hell am I going to do? Like, nothing.
So there's also there's a dead teacher in one notable scene, pretty pivotal scene. There's a dead teacher.
The side of the school?
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
And that's kind of horrifying as well.
That was...
Because she hasn't been seen for about 6 months, and then she shows up skeletal.
Yeah.
Just like...
With her friend who has been dead for like a year. Who shouldn't be there at all. Yeah. And they're just both dead and gross.
And then there's tunnels that also smell like dead things, and there's slugs that try to, like, in my head, because I would fish as a kid, and one of the bait that we used was leeches. I'm very familiar with leeches. But just thinking of, like, giant, oversized leeches.
Lampreys are worse than leeches. Lampreys are eels.
Right.
And they are like leeches if they were on mutagen and venom.
But it's like where my mind, like, just horrifying.
Yeah. See, that's why I didn't like the soldier, because his face turned into that. So he was the creepy soldier with no face and also had that face. Like, nope. And we haven't even gotten to the priest yet.
But the priest is...
I felt so bad for him. That poor guy. It's like the one legitimate adult who was kind of trying to help them, even misguided as he was.
Right.
He was the only person who seemed to have good intentions.
So the kids know that they can't talk about the stuff because when they do, nobody believes them.
Yes.
So they're trying to solve it on their own, which is, I think, understandable, believable. But there's a priest character who one of the kids is close with, not in a creepy way.
No.
It's a great priest.
Yeah, it's actually like one of the few times I can remember reading in a book about like a priest and a kid at the church, and it's actually like wholesome and good the way it should be.
And then something terrible happens to him.
Yeah, something so bad. That was pretty gross. Another reason I don't like the soldier, because the soldier did it, and so gross.
And then the priest is still a character, only now he's different.
Yeah, he's
not the same.
You kind of remember what happened to Hawkeye at the beginning of Avengers? Imagine that, but just way grosser than you could possibly imagine. And now you have zombie priest man. Yeah.
So it's sort of one supernatural thing happening to each of the kids for the most part.
Yeah, they're all targeted.
And there's Duane who does...
Oh, Duane.
Also a terrible scene.
That's the worst one.
Farm equipment.
Because Duane is so awesome. Duane is such a great character.
Duane is great.
He's voiced so well. That's one gripe I had. There is a sequel to this, a direct sequel called A Winter Haunting, and it's read by someone else. And there is moments where Duane is talking, and it doesn't sound like Duane at all, and it makes me so mad.
So the thing about Duane is he's the smartest kid, probably the smartest person
in the town.
Yeah.
And they all know it, and they don't like him for it.
Right. But he's the one that's actually piecing things together. So he's the one that's filling in backstory for the how and the why things are happening.
He knew it was happening before anyone else even got it, just because he put together all the little things and was like, yeah, something's not right here. You guys better start noticing this.
And so then something happens to Duane, and the rest of the kids need to figure it out on their own. And it's like the one guy that you had is now out of the picture, and you're like...
Yeah. Like, what are they going to do now? Because he was integral.
Yes.
And even after that, he is still integral.
Right.
Which is nice.
Yeah.
And even in the sequel, he is integral, so...
So it's one that I enjoyed.
Yeah, same here. Like I said, one of my all-time favorites.
Quite a bit, but as a genre, I'm still skeptical and...
Horror movies and books can go very many directions, and so many of them are less than good.
Right.
Yeah, no, this was awesome. This does actually have several follow-ups. Direct sequel still takes place like 40 years later. That's A Winter Haunting, and that is again about Dale, and Duane's in there, and it goes back to Elm Haven, back to the hometown, back to the same town that Summer of Night took place in, so you kind of get to see where it's at 40 years later. The other ones, there's Children of the Night, which is about O'Rourke, who becomes actually a Catholic priest. He does grow up to become a priest, and has to basically go toe-to-toe with Vlad the Impaler, who is also Count Dracula. That's a pretty cool book. There's also Darwin's Blade, which is about another character, but he works with Dale Stewart's younger brother, Lawrence, and so they have an adventure together that's pretty good. So you get to see Lawrence all grown up. And then there's also one that I haven't read yet. It's called Fires of Eden, and it's about Cordy Cook, who is all grown up and living in Hawaii now and is like a millionaire.
Huh.
And it's all about like some supernatural stuff and some like legends about Hawaii. Dan Simmons loves to a lot of times incorporate like real history and real legends into his stories and stuff like that. So it's kind of a story about legends and like just like stories like of like legendary things from Hawaii, but that he worked Cordy into also, so she could have another adventure. So that's kind of cool.
The only one that I have and have listened to is Winter Haunting.
Yeah.
I remember enjoying that, and it's read by Bronson Pinchot, who is spectacular.
You read? I liked it. I'd recommend most of the stuff I've read by Simmons. Abominable is another really good one. The Terror, which was made into a series on AMC. The first season, fantastic. I haven't seen the second season. The second season is not based on anything from Dan Simmons. I've heard good things about it. I just haven't seen it yet. It's good stuff. I recommend. Good author, good books.
It's a good book.
Yes.
Yeah. We've remained vague. I didn't want to go into spoilers.
Yeah, we did spoil a couple little things, clearly, but not enough of it, I think, to ruin said book.
Yes.
Like we usually do.
Right.
But that's usually for stuff that we didn't like, so we don't care.
And weirdly, this is one of the oldest things that we've talked about.
Yeah.
So like,
this is going back pretty far.
Like, I don't know. We spoil new things.
I guess it doesn't matter. We could spoil it.
I don't think so.
No?
No.
Let's get people to read something.
Yeah. I'd rather they just experience it.
Or just listen to it. Even get it on Audible. It's really good.
It is really good.
It's read very well. It's very entertaining. Great story. Good ending.
Recommend it for both of us.
Yeah. Is it good?
Yes.
It is good. Go get it. I guess that's really all we need to say then.
I think so.
Sweet. Maybe in the future we'll talk about some of those sequels. It'd be interesting if any of you guys have ever read this book or end up reading it. If you do, let us know. We'd love to know what you think. If you've had any good horror books or any good books in general you might want us to look at, always shoot a suggestion down there. Maybe we'll take a look at it.
We read all those comments.
Oh yes, every single one. And reply to as many of them as we can, which is pretty much all of them, I think.
Try.
I guess that's about it for this time. This has been Void City Reviews. Is it good? I am Dan.
I'm Toast.
And we will see you next time when hopefully it is still good.